There's a big difference between evidence and proof.
And if you can believe it, in one ceremony, she actually levitated out of her chair.
Hitler's on your side. No, Hitler's on your side. If God is real, why don't I have a girlfriend yet? Hey, welcome back to Common Mansplaining. Eddie here. Guys, I did a video not too long ago debunking Alex O'Connor on Jubilee, and I thought I'd take another shot at him. I recently saw a video of him playing a little bit fast and loose with some of the rhetoric, some of the logic, and so I thought I would try to clean some of it up, see if maybe some of these arguments can punch through and hit their mark.
A new, fast-growing Christian YouTube channel, Redeemed Zoomer, put out a video promisingly called All Atheist Arguments Answered in 10 Minutes.
I just realized these are kind of funny. Sky Daddy, if God is real, why don't I have a girlfriend yet? Your God did a genocide in the flood. He's big meanie. Look, here is a violent Bible verse that nobody ever noticed before. That's funny.
Let's see how he does.
Atheists have a lot of arguments, but they never really think of anything new that the church hasn't had answers to for the past 2,000 years. So let's answer them. Religion causes wars.
Oh boy.
Well, actually, only 7% of all human wars were caused by religion, and if you remove Islamic wars, that number drops down to 3%.
Right off the bat, this isn't really an argument for atheism, just for the idea that religion is harmful. Even if religion caused no wars at all, that's no actual evidence that any religion is true. Still, even if religion only causes 7% of wars, isn't it a problem that it causes any wars? The claim is not that religion causes all wars, or even most wars, just that it sometimes causes wars. I mean, to use a crude example, as far as I'm aware, National Socialism only ever caused one war. One out of the thousands that we have documented. But, of course, even if the vast majority of wars were started for other reasons, it's still a problem that this caused a war at all. Not a perfect analogy, but you get what I'm saying.
So, one of the problems I have with this is that we really need to define terms. To me, religion is just a set of beliefs about the universe, whether it's justified or not. By that definition, as broad as that is, it's literally every single person on earth has a set of beliefs about the universe, which would mean, by extension, that every single war on earth would be caused by at least some belief about the universe. So it's kind of unfair to say that religion causes wars when in reality, sure, it causes all wars in a sense. I don't know where he's getting the 3 and the 7% from. I don't know what qualifies as religion causing a war. I suspect he's talking about things like the Crusades or the Islamic conquest. In reality, I don't think that's fair, right? Because the Crusades don't really represent Christianity. They don't really represent the Catholic Church or anything. What they represent is a failed understanding of the Catholic Church. It's like what happens when you don't have the right religion in place rather than when you do have the right religion in place. So again, I don't think that's fair characterization. Now, the other thing to mention is that simply causing a war doesn't, like as he mentioned, it doesn't really make something true or false. It also doesn't make something necessarily bad, right? If your religion, for example, causes you to, say, defend yourself if attacked, I mean, yeah, instead you could just lay down and surrender. But instead, that religion caused a war because it called for you to defend yourself and defend the lives of your friends and family. Well, that may be a situation where a religion causes war, but it's definitely not a situation where religion is even harmful. So I'm not sure that that's a valid accusation either.
And it's worth asking, wherever there is a totally non-religious conflict, do you think that such a conflict would be calmed or exacerbated if we were to introduce religious conviction?
Well, again, I think it depends on what religion you're talking about. And I think it depends on whether or not you're actually implementing the religion as intended. So, for example, you take any conflict in the universe and you implant perfect Christianity. That is, love your neighbor like yourself. Love God with all your mind, body, soul, and heart. I don't think that conflict's going anywhere. I think everybody all of a sudden starts loving each other. And so it would, in fact, calm the situation. Now, what I think he's talking about is that religion often comes with passion. And human passion can sometimes exacerbate a situation. But then it's the human passion that's doing it. It's human greed that causes wars. It's human thirst for power that's causing the war, not the religion.
Perhaps only the correct religion would make things better.
Maybe.
That's fine, you can hold that position, but then even a believer can accept that many religions do often cause conflicts, or at least make them worse.
A lot of evil has been done in the name of religion. This is true, but the most murderous people in human history have been atheists. This doesn't mean religion is true, it just means you can't use that as an argument against it.
I just want to point out that whilst religious violence is motivated by religious beliefs, atheist violence is rarely motivated by atheism.
Yeah, see, again, he's playing the same game, right? If religion is just a set of beliefs, then the violence that's motivated by an atheist would be motivated by atheistic beliefs, the set of beliefs that person has about the universe. Now, simply because it's not shared by a bunch of people doesn't suddenly alleviate that set of beliefs from culpability in starting a conflict.
It's at best permitted by someone's atheism, but then religious violence is also permitted by the person's religious beliefs as well as being encouraged by them. But okay, on the Hitler thing, look, I don't know what his religious views really were. Some say he was a Catholic, the religion he was baptized into and confirmed in. He did also write in Mein Kampf that, quote, "In standing guard against the Jew, I am doing the handiwork of the Lord." Not a particularly atheist statement, but then Hitler was probably quite good at, well, lying. And perhaps the belief of some, even to this day, that he was a convicted theist is just a testament to the strength of his propagandic efforts. But if he was lying and didn't actually believe in God, then it's worth asking why he would think that lying about being religious would make his fascist campaign more successful. Whatever his own views personally were, he had every Nazi soldier wear belt buckles inscribed with the words "Gott mit uns," God with us. Clearly, even if he was personally an atheist, Hitler recognized that belief in a creator God can give people the confidence to do all kinds of evil.
All right, so one of the things that I'm tired of personally in this debate between atheists and Christians is that there's this ongoing endless tennis match of, you know, Hitler's on your side. No, Hitler's on your side, right? Like, no, Hitler's a Catholic. No, Hitler's a... See, but again, even if Hitler was in fact Catholic, even if he was in fact religious, it wasn't the fact that he had a religion that caused him to go out and be the mass murdering asshole that he was. It was his failed understanding of religion that would have caused it. It would have been the fact that he's racist, the fact that he wanted to be a world dominating power. Like, those are the things that made Hitler go out and kill everyone. Those are the things that made him perform the Holocaust. Those are the things that made him try to, like, annex countries for no reason. It's not religion. And again, of course, religion, even if it were responsible, doesn't make it not true. It doesn't make atheism correct. It just means that perhaps religion would be harmful. Now, I noticed they didn't mention Stalin or Mao. I mean, we've got a lot of people in the history of mankind who have performed a lot of violence. And again, I can tell you that these are human traits. This is not a religious trait. These are human traits. Christianity, when applied correctly, doesn't do that stuff. It just doesn't. When it's applied correctly.
Somewhere else, you wouldn't be a Christian. Okay, and if you were born somewhere else, you wouldn't be an atheist. Everyone's beliefs are shaped by their context.
Well, this just misses the point. Sure, all beliefs are shaped by their geography, but atheists don't claim that there's a God supervising the world who proactively wants everyone to believe in him. If such a God did exist, would we really expect him to reveal himself more strongly and reliably to, say, Americans than to Indonesians? It seems incredibly unlikely and unfair that your chances of being saved, of coming to know the true God, could be determined by where you happen to be born.
All right, so 3 things. Number 1, God has infinite knowledge, so he knows, from our perspective in advance, whether or not someone will be saved. So the distribution on earth might just reflect that, right? He might already know whether or not you're going to be saved. And if you're not going to be saved, he probably stuffs you in the Himalayas, you know? I'm being facetious, but you get the point, right? With infinite knowledge, you can place somebody anywhere you want. That local distribution is only important on earth. It's not important for the grand scheme of eternity. Number 2, our culpability when it comes to salvation is based on our access and exposure to the teachings and the Word of God. So, if you're in America and you have this much access and exposure to the Word of God, then you have this much responsibility to assimilate it, to have faith in God, and to find salvation. If you are in Indonesia and you only have this much access and exposure to God, then you have that much responsibility to get saved. It doesn't take as much. So to whom much is given, much is required. Now, last but not least, I personally believe that God gives each and every one of us at least one shot. That is, one shot with full knowledge at the point of death. It's like, boom, here's me, here's God, all his splendor. Now you know the truth. Do you choose me? And if you do, great. And if you don't, great. And that's the thing. You know, you're in that situation. You've got the full knowledge. So it's not like anybody's getting left out. God doesn't leave people out. He doesn't leave people behind. It's not like, oops, I forgot about this one guy over here in Japan. That's why I put him in Japan. No.
If atheism is true, however, it's no surprise that where you're born shapes your religious beliefs, because that's what we think religious beliefs are, products of local mythology or political dominance. So yeah, if I was born in Indonesia, I'd probably be a Muslim. But whilst that's exactly what we'd expect if there is no universal God supervising everything and it's all just a product of local mythology, it's nothing like what we'd expect if there were a real universal God.
I mean, I don't think that would be any different if there were a real universal God. I think it could very easily be distributed unevenly. But one more thing to mention now, it's not like the internet doesn't exist, right? So if you're born in Indonesia, you can still find out that there is this guy named Jesus Christ. You can still find out that there is this thing called Christianity. It's not like all of a sudden, you know, your eyes are closed and you're blindfolded.
By the way, I call this the genetic fallacy.
How do you know which religion is true? Well, everyone, religious or not, has faith in a certain worldview. It's just that some worldviews are called religions and some are secular. But everyone has to ask the question of which worldview best explains the world.
So yeah, look at this. See, this is my point. This is the point I made in the beginning. Religion is just a set of beliefs about the universe. So like paganism, nihilism, some of this stuff is just not what people would call religion. But it is a worldview. It is a set of beliefs about the universe.
World.
Nothing to add here. Yes, every worldview should be justified.
I would actually argue against that. I don't think that every worldview needs to be justified. I think that it's best if we can, but there are definitely axiomatic beliefs that are just never going to be justified. And many of us base our entire worldview on these axiomatic beliefs. Just ask yourself, for those of you out there who don't have any faith, ask yourself if you believe in reality. Do you? Do you believe in existence? Do you believe in reality? Prove it. I mean, if you try, you're just going to use sense data that emanates from within reality, making it circular evidence, making it need to be thrown out. So then you still can't prove it. So anybody who believes in reality out there, you've got an unjustified belief. If you don't believe in reality, then you're a nihilist and you still have an unjustified belief. So either way, it's a catch-22. We've all got these axioms. I don't know why every belief needs to be justified. Some of it's just first principles.
There's no scientific proof that God exists. Well, by definition, science can only prove things inside the natural world, and by definition, God is something outside the natural world. So science can neither prove nor disprove God.
That's fine if you want to say that science has nothing to say about God, but you've just undercut a great deal of natural theology.
That's not what he said. He said science can't prove God. Let's try this again just so you guys can hear it.
There's no scientific proof that God exists. Well, by definition, science can only prove things inside the natural world, and by definition, God is something outside the natural world. So science can neither prove nor disprove God.
Prove nor disprove God.
That's fine if you want to say that science has nothing to say about God.
Not nothing to say. There's difference between being able to prove something and having evidence that bears on something. As a matter of fact, many of the scientific arguments out there are Bayesian in nature. They're basically probabilistic, right? So it's not that they can prove God, but they do make it more likely.
But you've just undercut a great deal of natural theology. You're disagreeing with everybody who tries to prove God's existence with the fine-tuning argument, or the Big Bang in the Kalam cosmological argument, irreducible complexity, arguments about the genetic code, indeed, even the historical argument for the resurrection of Jesus. These just automatically cannot work in establishing God's existence, since material investigations can't bear on the...
See, again, he did it. He's playing fast and loose with this rhetoric. He didn't say that it can't bear on it. He just said it can't prove it, right? You can have this scientific information that leads you down a path. It may not take you all the way to the very end of the path, but it can still lead you down that path.
Supernatural. Well, this is fortuitous. Literally, as I was recording this video, Redeemed Zoomer released a new video called All Arguments for God Explained in 10 Minutes. Now, given that he's just said that science can never bear on the supernatural and can't prove or disprove God's existence, just take a listen to this.
Things in nature, like the human cell or the ecosystem of the world, are very complex and they work like a machine. Now, Darwinian evolution can explain why that is, but there's also things Darwinian evolution can't explain, like the 4 constants of the universe. There are physical constants like the gravitational constant and the electron charge, the strong nuclear force and the weak nuclear force that are perfectly fine-tuned, such that if they were even the slightest bit different, the entire universe would immediately collapse in on itself.
Sounds pretty, I don't know, scientific, doesn't it? So it seems like when an atheist is arguing that science disproves God, no, science and religion are totally separate, non-overlapping magisteria. But when it comes to proving God's existence, hey, look at these finely tuned constants.
Yeah, so he's cheating right now. This is a bait and switch, right? He's definitely not making the statement that these can prove God. He's making the statement that they can make God more likely. It's a Bayesian argument. It's more probable that God exists based on this scientific data. And he's correct that it can neither prove nor disprove God. An atheist cannot use scientific evidence to disprove something that doesn't exist in the... You could never prove a negative anyway.
Isn't that amazing?
There's no evidence of anything supernatural. Well, that's just not accurate. There are medically documented cases of people with demonic possession speaking in languages they don't know, for example, and people with near-death experiences getting information they never had access to.
Okay, medically documented cases of people with demonic possession sounds awesome. I would love to take a look at that, medical documentation. I get the feeling you're not going to provide any, are you? Fear not, we do have one source that was flashed on screen, a book by Richard Gallagher called Demonic Foes. So, okay, I bought the book. I only skimmed through a couple of chapters, but I did also watch a few of Dr. Gallagher's interviews. In the book, he talks about some of his experiences with people he believes were demonically possessed, including a woman he calls Julia. Evidence for demonic possession consists principally in people like Julia having special powers. One night, Dr. Gallagher heard his normally peaceful cats screeching and fighting with each other. And the next day, he meets a woman he calls Julia, who says, "How'd you like those cats last night?" Weird, for sure, but not quite yet the medical documentation that we're seeking. So then, what other special powers did Julia have? Well, Dr. Gallagher writes in the Washington Post of how she knew things that she couldn't have known naturally, including exactly how his mother had died years ago. But also, get this, she could tell some people their secret weaknesses, such as undue pride. Okay, but how about this? Julia, during various exorcisms, was suddenly able to speak fluent Latin out of nowhere. We're not told what she said, of course, but it happened. And, if you can believe it, in one ceremony, she actually levitated out of her chair, literally floating in the air for half an hour. Atheists cannot explain that one. But we don't have to take Dr. Gallagher's word for this. Oh no. Actually, we can't, because he didn't see this himself. But we can just accept that the people who did see her levitate and told him about it were super trustworthy. We'll just have to take his word about somebody else's word.
See, again, this is another game that Alex O'Connor's playing. I don't know if he's doing this on purpose or if he's just counting on his audience not to notice or to be so biased in his favor that they accept it anyway. He's zeroed in on a hyper-specific case inside a hyper-specific source for a video that really isn't supposed to provide a lot of sources, right? It was just an overview video, right? It was like every argument for atheism explained away in 10 minutes or something. Not like every argument for atheism explained to the nth degree with millions of sources backing up all of my explanations. Yeah. So this is a game, right? And someone with Alex's intellect, I think he can manage a quick Google search. There have been tons and tons of NDEs documented, near-death experiences documented. There have been tons of demonic possession situations documented. There have been other stuff like paranormal activity, ghosts, and psychic situations and telepathy and remote viewing. And who knows, I'm sure that the gamut of this information is everywhere along the spectrum from ridiculously unreliable to awfully compelling. And that's just going to be the nature of interactions like this. I'm sure there's a ton of information about UFOs that may or may not be supernatural, interdimensional beings that may or may not be supernatural. Who knows? But the point is, there's plenty of that information out there. Alex just didn't really look for it.
That's not to say that I can prove she wasn't possessed, or that Dr. Gallagher's priests were mistaken or lying, but this book, which is the only citation Redeemed Zuma provided, hardly fulfills my evidential expectations. But here's the thing, even if you could provide some kind of actual medical evidence for demonic possession, didn't you literally just say that science can never prove anything supernatural?
Again, he said it wouldn't be proof, but it would be evidence of, right? There's a big difference between evidence and proof. And it's a distinction, by the way, that I've noticed atheists seem to avoid. When they ask for evidence of God, they don't actually want evidence of God. They want proof of God. And when you provide evidence, it's not good enough because it isn't, in fact, proof.
Maybe you just think this wouldn't count as scientific evidence? But if there can't be any scientific documentation of demonic possession, then what kind of evidence are you talking about here? Anecdotes? Testimony? It's just not doing it for me. Of course,
testimony is evidence, even though, I'm sure it's not going to do. It wouldn't matter if this was like a doctor literally like mapping this out in a chart. He wouldn't believe it. It's not like it's going to change anybody's mind. No matter how detailed, no matter how medically relevant the documentation is, it just wouldn't make any difference.
Of course, people are always making claims about the way that things occurred. And today, information is released faster than it can be verified.
The Bible has contradictions. Okay, you think you found an apparent contradiction that the church hasn't known about for 2,000 years? Every apparent contradiction can be explained by understanding just a little bit of theology.
Every contradiction? All of them?
Yes, actually, believe it or not, every single one of them. Now, to the best of my knowledge, and I love to be proven wrong, for those of you guys who are listening, please post something in the comments. I have never actually seen a logical contradiction in the Bible. I've seen a lot of apparent contradictions or things that are like mild discrepancies, things like the difference between the genealogy and one gospel to another, which the funny thing is that one's brought up a lot. One of them as the genealogy of his mother and one of them as the genealogy of his father. So I'm not sure even why that one's brought up, but like there's a whole field full of those, right? There's a whole field full of like, well, it says that Jesus went here before he went to Egypt, before he came back to Jerusalem. And here it says he went right to Jerusalem. And I'm like, no, it doesn't really say went right to and skip Egypt. All these contradictions are basically accounted for in some form or another by the church. Now, some of these are more and less trustworthy explanations, and some of the discrepancies are more and less compelling. But there's nothing in there that's like this triangle has four sides. Nothing like that. There's no logical contradictions in the Bible.
Look, you're right. I wouldn't claim to have discovered some new contradiction that nobody has noticed before. I would just say that the proposed solutions to many of them seem to be, shall we say, theologically motivated. The one contradiction that you flashed on screen is probably the least troublesome contradiction that you could possibly have chosen. So, how about, for instance, 1. Matthew and Luke give different genealogies.
Boom! Just talked about this.
For Jesus' lineage. Matthew says that Jacob is Joseph's father, whilst Luke says that Heli is Joseph's father. Some people claim that Luke is actually giving Mary's lineage, while Matthew is giving Joseph's. Heli is Mary's father. It's just recorded as Joseph's father because Joseph was Heli's son-in-law. Augustine's solution to this problem was to suggest that Joseph was actually adopted, so Jacob is his biological father, while Heli is his adopted father. And sure, these are both possible, but are they really the most natural interpretation of the text?
I don't see why it wouldn't be. And honestly, I don't even know why it would matter. This is the other side to this. One of the problems that I often run into in this debate is that atheists are all under the impression that all Christians are like biblical fundamentalists and like literal translationists of the Bible, word per word per word. Nothing can ever be a mistake or an error or a mistranslation. I don't believe that. I think that this is an old document just like any other. Let's say hypothetically, the genealogies were confused and that somebody made a clerical error or something like that. Or maybe they didn't, and then someone else down the line in the translation chain made a clerical error and like miscopied something. So it doesn't disprove the Bible. It doesn't disprove anything. It barely bears on anything important in the Bible anyway, right? The only things that would really be important to find a discrepancy are things like, did Jesus die? Was he resurrected? Et cetera, right? These are like the bare bones of the faith. If you can attack that, if you can find that like one gospel says that Jesus doesn't die, or that another gospel says that he wasn't actually resurrected, then I think you'd be onto something. Then you'd have some insurance in your camp. But none of this does anything to diminish the faith itself at all. Guys, that's all I got for you today. I know that we're only like a third of the way through this, and this is a long video, so I didn't want to take up way too much time. I wanted to give you guys segments of my appraisal. But the bottom line is that Alex is playing games, right? He's trying his hardest to make sure that this atheism holds up. But in reality, every single one of the atheistic objections that have been raised over the eons that Christianity has existed for, every single one of them has been addressed probably 20 or 30 times. Now, like I said, they're like anything else. There are explanations that are not very plausible to explanations that are extremely compelling. And that's just the world we live in. It's never going to be 100%, or no one would ever need faith. Catch you next time. Common Mansplaining.